For the better part of my career, more than 20 years, I've been a corporate girl in supply chain management and logistics or classical marketing. But come 2020, COVID and the Great Reset, I got an opportunity to work in a non-profit organization which was helping young unemployed people to be able to break out of that trap of unemployment by connecting them with their first employment opportunity, allowing them to build experience, build that reference letter, and then move on to bigger opportunities. My name is Novantu Nkulwana, and in this season of my life, my ambition is to help the emerging social entrepreneur to be able to flatten that learning curve, scale up their projects, and deliver more impact quicker than ever before. Join us on the NPO Bootcamp as we show you how to level up your social enterprise. Welcome back to our second masterclass with Ndatezwane. I've asked him if he can take us through how AYDF approaches financial management, for the reason that because they are such a big beneficiary of the Department of Social Development, one of the requirements is that they need to be audited by the Auditor General.
Yes.
So I would like him to help us understand that process. And for you, Ndatezwane, you opt to be audited by the Auditor General.
Now we are selected.
You are selected,
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
So take us through how all that came about.
Well, I mean, we started small, and I think now we are one of the NPOs which are getting a sizable amount of funding from DST. And I think just from that, we are high risk, and therefore we get monitored, I think, more than many people. But one thing I would like to say to my friends out there is that being an NPO is an advantage, especially if you are funded by the Gauteng DST. I don't know what happens with the others. We are monitored tightly.
Okay.
Right? We have monthly visits from the monitoring department who are monitoring our finances every month. We report on the 7th every month. We report quarterly. We report within 6 months, and we submit a final annual report. Now, that may seem cumbersome, but what I've found, because when we now ventured into the private space, is because we are used to that compliance. It makes it easy when people want to do due diligence on us. When we are selected for the Auditor General audit, we don't panic because there's such a regiment of But just to say a bit of history on finance of me, because this is not my water. Everything that you love to do has a part of it that you don't love to do. And unless you learn to do things you don't love to do, you can't lead. So I am not a financially interested person. I'm passionate about problems. I'm passionate about doing the things that we have to do. And for a long time, I looked at finance as just compliance. I just thought we hire accountants, they do whatever they do, and all I would ask is, are the clients happy with what you've done? If the clients are happy with what you've done, let me continue with this. And I genuinely thought you could run an organization and not pay attention to finances. I mean, it's not even funny. I really thought this is just a nuisance that needs to be attended to whilst I want to attend this, which was a great mistake. And we paid for that in a number of ways. One is we hired an accountant, and because I didn't look, and I just said, are people happy? We discovered after we had let go of that person that our books were not in order. And now we discovered this is we got the new accounting auditor firm. Right? So this is where the board helps, because what we did is we got, just briefly on the board. It's very difficult to get a good board as an NPO, primarily because you don't pay them. So they have to be volunteer.
No NPO is paying for board members.
No, it's not that. Like DST does not allow its money to pay board members. So if you want to pay board members, we need to raise that money somewhere.
Okay, so just to be clear there,
Yeah.
funders will tell you how the funds may and may not be used.
Yes.
And what you're finding, your funders are saying, this is not for board.
Well, one fund,
One funder.
Yeah.
Okay.
our major fund.
Okay.
So we've reached a point now where we're paying our board members.
Okay.
But what I've found is fixing the governance was the toughest part. One, because it's not an acute pain, so it's something that you feel like you can ignore, right? And it's something that you feel like you can tick a box. And then next is when you get the people who volunteer, sometimes they really behave like volunteers. Show up in meetings, don't show up in meetings. Really, some, not to be disparaging, maybe they're just trying to be nice, but they're not necessarily,
The heart is not there.
etc. But we kept at it, and what we found is the quality of our board improved. As we invited more knowledgeable people, we found that it improved. Number one, we learned that in our board meetings, we're dealing with operational issues. I remember, in particular, our previous chairperson, Mrs. Odlachwai, who actually, we had such amazing people. I think the first one who helped us to move is Lindy. I think Lindy, she knows herself. And she then just got us in line. We then got a board that was holding us accountable, asking questions.
And not letting you deal with operational issues in the board meeting.
So one of the difficult things being a board member in an NGO is, remember, normally in corporate, board members are selected by the shareholders, right? Mm-hmm. So board members are selected by the shareholders, and they hold a particular share, right, that they can vote if matters need to be divided through a vote. So within an NPO, that's not the case, right? Your board members are elected by the members. You've requested them to come. So some come, and they're just assisting this person who has this vision and who is doing this. And they sometimes can feel like they're not qualified to challenge this person, because you don't have an official power per se. It's more or less like artificial within the NPO. You see, within a corporate, it's...
you feel like you have a mandate.
Yeah, you have a mandate, and it's backed up by shares, and there's no question about it. But here, you've been invited, you're coming here to help, and sometimes you may feel like maybe,
Don't rock the boat too much.
I don't need to push this person so much, etc., etc. So there's that degree. And I got a chance to ask King about this.
Like Professor Mervyn King.
Professor Mervyn
Like
King.
you eyeballed Professor Mervyn.
I eyeballed him. And I said to him, Professor King, the King principle, how does it apply to NPOs? Because I mentioned these things. I don't remember his answer. Maybe I was too awed by the fact that I was in front of. But it is a reality. Mm-hmm. However, I have found that if you have, it takes time, but if you have a good board that holds you accountable, that asks you questions, it is so helpful. You need to get that right. And for us, it's been cumulative. And what we found is, as you get a good board, then they help you get other board members who are more or less, at their level. So
you haven't finished your story about how the board got you a new finance person,
yes,
which is how you saw that the other person who was doing the books was doing mshiga.
Yeah. So that's what happened. So the board looks at our books. I think, first of all, these are not audited financial statements.
Right?
Right? This person is not an auditor.
You were under the impression that the person
was under the impression that you see, that's the danger of not paying attention to. I was under the impression that our finances were audited, but we just had somebody who could just combine a finances, right? And we had a board, which, man, you really will appreciate a good board, which was very clear that the auditors are clients of the board, not of the executive.
Fascinating.
Right?
Okay.
That yes, no. The auditors are auditing on behalf of the board, not so. All along, we were doing that with the law. So the first thing that they did is they did a proper process of appointing the financial company. It was a board that looked at the submissions, interviews, and they appointed the auditor. I mean, that's when I learned about the SICA and SIPA. And apparently SICA is more reputable.
So you got schooled there?
Yeah, I got schooled. I didn't know. People said, no, this is SIPA. You can't. So they appointed this guy. So when these financial guys look and they give us the preliminary report, they are saying, I was never as shocked as this. They saying, they say we cannot vouch for the beginning of the year because actually they have to audit. So they have to use the previous audited financials as a baseline.
Which did not exist.
So which means we had just compiled finances, but that's not a train smash because I think at a certain level you can have the compiler, not necessarily audited statement. But what they are saying is the state of those compiled finances was such that they can't say what was the financial state of AYTF as they took over. And therefore that was the first law. It meant that they were going to give us an unqualified audit. So our
Sorry, that is unqualified or unqualified?
Qualified.
Qualified.
So they're going to give us qualified.
Yes.
Yeah, that was our first. So we had to pay them to then do the previous year. So we had to pay them to do 2 years. They had to do the previous year, and the previous year was then qualified. And then they did the second year, which was then unqualified. So that's the price of not paying attention to finances.
So that gave you...
Those school fees were, right?
So then after this happened, what in your mindset or your behavior changed?
So during this time, we are under Rise Corp.
Okay.
Right? Because one of our board members, Fatima Kunyan, and I really want to thank him for that. Looking at how we are passionate, myself and patient, but we are not, we're not playing with the full deck, I think, in this space. So he looked for how he can assist us, and he actually went out and looked and found a Rise Corp for us, Fatima Kunyan. He made the applications. We were just called. We went through that rigorous process, where people just attack you for no reason. I had never watched Shark Tank, so I didn't understand when you present to people and they're just on top of you, stripping you and just, what is this? What? Yeah,
when are you going to understand there?
So, wonderful process that we did, and it took 2 years, and then we got into Rise Corp. So the people who are responsible for changing my mind and it took time for this to be beaten to my head. I remember Alon saying, and even our guides and facilitators saying, an entrepreneur cannot delegate finances. You can delegate everything, but you cannot delegate finances. At first, yeah. That's what they would say, right? But so these happens whilst we were there. So it was proving what they were saying, because at Rise Corp you meet with 5 guys per month. So when we had this problem of our books not right, we spoke to them, So it was them who said, no, talk to these guys, they can do that audit and then blah, 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 blah. So what Rise Corp helped us do is, number one, management accounts. I never knew about management accounts.
So management accounts were not happening at AYDM?
We're not.
Okay.
We're not. As I said, I was just...
Okay, maybe for somebody that's watching and they don't know the difference between management accounts and annual financial statements, what's the difference?
All right. So management accounts happen monthly, and it looks at the financial statement at the finances of the organization on a monthly basis, right? So it looks at sales, the amount that came in. It looks at the cost of sales, which is another concept that I had to learn, that I didn't know, right? What did it cost you to make that sale, right? So sales minus cost of sales, that gives you a gross profit, right? So it tells this was a gross profit. And then from the gross profit, you minus the expenses, and then you get the net. So that's your management account.
So in your world, what then is sales? And what is cost of sale?
It's the income that comes in, right? So, for example, very good question. So what are the things that we learned? Goodness, in our world. Because you get management accounts and you get the balance sheet.
Right.
So that's what you get on a monthly basis, right? So I'd heard these words and I wasn't interested in them, but I had to learn them, right? And it's very important. So the balance sheet just shows the assets and the liabilities of the company. So when we came in, let's say the funding that we get from DST is we negotiate for a year and it comes in tranches. We get funding per quarter. So when the amount came in per quarter, we listed that as sales. And we had to be corrected. That's not sales.
Of course, because now it's a quarterly figure. You need to break it down into 3 months.
Not that.
Oh.
It's that. It's not sales. Goodness, I forget this term. They had a very, very good term that says it is not a sale until the transaction is complete. Until what has been paid for is done. So the income that we're getting had to go to the balance sheet in the liabilities as income received in advance. You understand? So I didn't know that. Yeah.
I see yes. Mrs. Fourie taught me that in Standard 7.
Yes.
Okay.
I never did accounting or anything like that. So we had to learn that, to say, no, it's not sales. It's actually income. So as we do the activities for that, right, that quarter, we do training, then we bring that up.
Got it.
As sales.
Got it.
We do monitoring and evaluation, it comes in at sales. But otherwise in the balance sheet, it stays as income received.
So if you're getting your money in tranches, there's a staggered approach to reflecting it in your management account.
Yeah.
That was a big learning for you. Nearly messed you up.
Big is an understatement.
Yeah.
It was another word. I didn't know that,
Right.
And just the practice of, because in your management accounts, you look at every item, what happened in the expenses.
And you never used to do that.
I never used to do
You used to leave it to this guy.
Yeah.
And then he or she would bring you the figures, and then you would just sign.
I wouldn't even look at them.
You would
just are the clients happy about it? If they are, I sign it.
Okay. Completely detached from the figures.
Completely detached from the figures.
Okay.
Completely. And when you start looking at that, then you can pick up and say, why is this? Because the management accounts show you from month to month. That's a nice thing. You can see March, April, May, June. It shows you all those things. What are the sales? what were the cost of sales, right? What were the...
And that is I'm not judging your other accountants, ne? But this person probably looked and said, this one, now I'm shy, this one. Huh?
Possibly. Quite possibly. I think so. And I suspect that the person didn't have enough knowledge as well.
Is it?
And we couldn't tell.
So it was a combination of issues, not just like taking advantage of the...
It may have been the blind leading the blind.
Is it? Okay. Okay.
May have been.
Okay.
I'm not saying definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a fundamental shift for you in terms of how you approach
It
your...
was a fundamental shift. However, the fundamentals were there, in the sense of we did have systems of requisitioning.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever money needs to become, there needs to be requisition. The requisition needs to be signed. The amounts that were spent needs to be reconciled, right? And that's what's handed to the accountant. So the nice thing about that is we then started paying attention to the finance department. At first we didn't. We had just one person, I think. And then the strange thing, which was nice, remember there's a boy I told you about, Umngobi, the one who's created a company that's going to...
Yes, the one with the coupe, with the fancy car.
PwC. He came into our lives at that time. And I hadn't seen him in a long time. And in the meantime, he had educated himself in finances and he knows this. And we had an opportunity to hire him. And he came and he set our finances in order.
Nice.
And we had a young person who was doing finance.
Beautiful.
Put the systems, taught her. And then we started having finances that were stable. Having management accounts every month. I would look at them, question, where is this, what's happening, etc., etc. And the balance sheet. But the basics are those very, very, very important, especially with NPO, is at the basic, have a plan, have a budget, that we have a budget, and do requisitions, reconcile. If you do those, what I found is because we did those things, and don't use money for any other purpose except for the NPO. If you do that, you may be lost, but whoever can come, if they set things up, it's going to be fine. I think if you have money dripping, either way, that becomes a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that design, we've covered quite a lot of ground. We've spoken about the role of board members and how they were able to help in terms of driving accountability, driving different kinds of thinking within the organization.
Yes.
We've spoken about the role of the leader and their relationship with finances. And if that relationship isn't great, what happens in the organization? Yes. But what I'd like us to do is go back to the relationship with the Auditor General, or with the funder being the DSD, and then who needs to comply with the requirements of the Auditor General. So in that design, if you could maybe help us understand that process of being audited, what preparation is required, what documentation is required, firstly on the monthly audit, the quarterly one, the semi-annual, and the annual one. All right.
So because we paid quarterly, right? So we account monthly. Mm-hmm. So you paid quarterly, and then the accounting would refer to issues like, if you have service providers, did you have 3 codes? So you must have those, right? Filed, and the reasons why you chose the other one, right? And you don't necessarily always choose the cheapest, as long as you have the reasons and you explain. So we file those, right? Then invoices are filed, all receipts are filed, every spending, right? When people reconcile, our system of reconciliation is you do a requisition, and then the reconciliation at the back has the slips, right? And one of the most important things is to make copies of the slip, because the slips fade over time. So you can take a picture with your phone, or actually make copies and attach copies next to the slips because over time they fade. So essentially then that's what is reported to the monthly basis. What did we spend? And then we have a visit. The visit then looks at the documentation. And they look at we submit our whole, so what we've learned to do, although we're not yet the 100%, is to try and have an account per client.
Okay.
Right? So the finance department says it's easier if you do the ledger.
Okay.
From rather than if you have all different funders in one account.
Okay.
So what you find, maybe like we use Standard Bank, you can have the main account, but under that main account you can have
sub-accounts.
You can have sub-accounts, and you can put your different funders in those. Yeah.
Okay. So that is on this 3-code system.
Yes.
Does it apply to every level of spending or spending above a certain amount?
So the board needs to design that, right? And say, like you say, acquisition policy, to say at what level is what. Like, for example, petty cash for us is 5,000 rands. So petty cash up to 5,000 rands, managers or whatever can do petty cash. And then above 5,000 rands, it then includes us, the directors, we need to sign. And then I think I would say maybe once it starts at 100,000, we need to inform the treasurer. She'd like to know.
The treasury, as in the government treasury?
No. Our board.
Okay. Oh, treasurer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Treasurer.
Got it.
Yeah. So at 100,000 rands, we need to inform it so that she's aware.
Okay.
Because the board account.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And this is acquisitions, because sometimes our day-to-day operations at the size that we've been in can be over 100,000. But if we want to buy something that's above 100,000 rands, then we notify our treasurer.
Okay.
So that's the accounting, really. So DSD officials come. We've submitted on the 7th of each month. We submit. This was the expenditure against the plans, because we need to project how we're gonna spend money, and then they're going to compare the projection with the actuals, and then most importantly, they look at the documentation if it makes sense. So what I found is that is helpful. Because if you do that, then when the Auditor General comes, your books are in order, right? They are filed in that sense. So you don't do a lot of running around. And usually the Auditor General asks for samples, right? They say, maybe they get the DL, General Ledger, the GL.
That's the GL.
Yeah, GL. They would ask for that. And then from there, they would say, okay, I want this, and tick in that, and our finance would then spend time finding that for them, submitting, and then they come in person, and sometimes they ask for us as directors.
When do they come?
It's random.
But based on what you've just described, if you make sure that your monthly stuff is okay, and then I'm in month 1, I need to have a forecast for month 2 and month 3.
Yeah.
And then in month 2, I need to have actuals for month 1 and a forecast for, you just keep rolling that pattern.
Yes.
Then you should be okay.
You're okay.
So they're not asking for a lot.
Well, let me say this. If you do that, you're at the point where whatever they ask for, you can provide.
But what I'm saying, you're doing it. Is it difficult? Did you have to bring in extra resource? What did you have to do in order to be able to?
Well, we now have a finance department, right? So we have a financial manager. He has 3 bookkeepers.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. And they work many hours.
And you've been a beneficiary with the Department of Social Development since when?
2012.
So it's 12 years, right?
Yeah.
So each year, is it possible that they can say you haven't met our requirements and therefore we're taking the funding away?
That's part of the service level agreement.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that if there's something fishy about finances, they actually can stop tranches. So they've done that with many NPOs.
Is it?
Yeah.
But you, quarterly, you're getting your tranches because when
the reason the Auditor General is sent to us is because the department is short.
Nizoba happy, bazoba happy. Into the hamba online, eh?
No. Yes. One is we've had this agreement with my partner, Maling, that we don't even discuss anything close to corruption or anything. So that's clear, right? And what we found is if you are fine, whoever can come to look at your books, they will find that things are fine, right? So the previous date that I said we were disordered, but there was no shenanigans. So if anybody comes and irons our books and checks, they'll find that there's no shenanigans. We're disordered, this was lacking, etc. And as we were becoming more ordered, and it's very important to discuss that issue in terms of if you're an NPO. And we've had that discussion of we will not do anything corrupt. We will not countenance it. We've been approached a number of times with such innuendos. And the answer is very clear. No, we're not going to even take part. We're not going to do anything. And you have to be willing to pay a price for that. There was a time where we had gotten a funding for about 3.5 million rands with another department that I won't say. And then we had an approach. After I was called, you've got this. And then I had an approach. And because we said no, that was pulled out. We didn't get it.
So you got approached by somebody within the same department?
Yeah. And it was pulled. 3.5.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And we had to let it go.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to pay that price and not do anything. It is very important. I cannot stress that enough. The devil is very deceptive. If you think you can get away with this thing, you are deceived. That's just straight up. There's no, because people who are asking for such things, it's like, okay, how am I going to report it? Because I need to report it. So where are we going to say this money went? Where's the documentation?
Can I quote Dr. Mike Murdoch again?
Yes.
He said, the reason I thought of that is when you said, if you think you can get away with it, you are deceived.
Yeah.
Dr. Mike Murdoch says that those who sin together eventually sin against each other. And you see this so often when we've bamba somebody in Kunzi, then I turn state noodles. What is that?
Yeah.
And these things come out when it's least convenient, when I'm on the back foot, when I'm not expecting it. So I absolutely agree with you. Let us not be deceived by Zalwane. When that lady from finance is asking for the copies of the receipts, give them to her, please. Give them to her. So let's close up this one in that design by saying it is possible to comply
Yes.
with what the Auditor General is asking for. Yeah. It's nothing onerous. It may need a lot of some restructuring and have proper structures and systems in place, but it is something that you've been able to do for the last 2 years, for the last 12 years.
Yes. For the last 12 years, we've never had any issue on finances, except we were robbed. We were hit about 450,000 rands.
How?
We're buying a car, and it's this, what do you call this? What do you call this thing? These guys who hack.
Oh, okay.
We were buying a car.
Excuse me.
And they intercepted the email and changed the bank account of So it's one of those lessons that we had to learn. We had to learn a lot. We had to learn the issue of segregation of duties. Like a loader, a releaser, and a release. So what a loader, we can load. I don't have powers to load, but I'm the final release, right? And then my partner releases. Those things are very critical. But
what system are you working on?
Sage.
Yeah. So this is how you set up what access or authority whatever user has.
Yeah.
Got
So we're using Sage and we're using Zero now as for our side.
Yes. For those that don't know, Zero is Xero.
Yeah.
Zero like that.
Yeah. So that fraud, that was a huge stress, because 450,000 rands. It was the first time we sponsored for the car. We've been asking for that for a long time. It was going to be the first car, and they changed the bank account, and we paid to that account, and that money just went up. So from there, the board had to be questioned by the funders because they were suspecting that it's us. I had to do a report. We had to pay for the forensic that produced a report and the recommendation. So now we have the firewall, cybersecurity, and all those things. So all those are school fees that you want to avoid.
Yeah, but that was a terrible lesson. That is one. Okay. So let's wrap up on financial management. We've already spoken about audited financials up front. You do have a company that does your audits your financials every year. So those are in place.
Yes.
And then as another step, you have the Auditor General that comes and audits you.
So we have, we have the DSD monitoring department that comes to us monthly, and we submit to them monthly report, and we submit quarterly reports, right? And then the Auditor General comes once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once, and then they say, the Auditor General is coming, guys, and then...
But she can come, send the people, narrate.
Sorry.
Very good.